Hello, everyone. Welcome to another storyteller interview. Today, I am so excited because I'm interviewing a first-time storyteller, and those are my favorite interviews. And I'm talking to the wonderful Sullivan. Hi, Sully. How are you?
Hello, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. You are in Washington State.
I am, yes.
And I am currently in Lisbon, Portugal. You are going to be telling a story on Ripple Effect, which is a true storytelling show that's happening on June 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I am co-producing with Veronica and Hipolo, who's in Ontario. So we're going to have storytellers in different places in the US and Canada. And because you're a first-time storyteller, I want to ask you what made you decide, or what makes you excited to tell a story at a show for the first time?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a storyteller, and just in regular life, everyone's just like, Sully, you have really good stories or in the like. And it's always something I've really enjoyed listening to. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of instances where people are telling stories, like Moth Radio Hour and TED Talks, where it's maybe a little bit more on the educational side, but sometimes they do have like a lot of storytellers on there. And I just find stories very powerful. And I also find them a way to kind of catalog, the human experience in a way, because I feel that stories are a way to share our experience and to connect with another person. And I don't know, I've just always been intrigued by it, and saw you doing your thing and you reached out, and I was just like, yes, this is the moment. And so
Cool. Amazing. So you've listened to podcasts, including the Moth Radio Hour. Do you remember how you felt when you first heard someone tell a story on stage, on a podcast, but like the recorded experience of imagining someone being on stage sharing a personal story, and what that felt like?
yeah, it's just, maybe I'm like a sensitive or empathetic human, but it's just amazing how someone can be so vulnerable and get up on a stage and share just a snippet of their life. Because it's one thing to tell a story when you're surrounded by friends and people you're comfortable with, or where the atmosphere kind of, brings that story out of you. But it's a whole nother thing, I feel like, to get on a stage when you're on a spotlight. And so I feel like that's something that runs through my head when I listen to these stories, because it's just like, wow, this individual got the courage to be very vulnerable with a large group of strangers. And now I get the opportunity to then share in that experience and listen in, as a viewer on a podcast. And I found that very fascinating, because I feel like storytelling is just deeply ingrained into the human experience. It's just how we how we keep track of and share and teach others in instances. And because the particular story I think that really struck me was this woman got up and told her experience of being a spy in Britain. And it's just such a good story, and it's a love story, but it's sad, and it's just like, oh, like, but that was a piece of history. Like, she was part of history, and to have that story finally shared, and for her to be allowed to speak it, because for the longest time she wasn't even allowed to shout her name out and be
Right.
like, I did this. And now we have a piece of history, and it was just such a good story. And I then became hooked on storytelling.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And so this makes me think about your story that you're about to share at the show. And because I think it's also a bit of history. And I was wondering, when you thought about telling a story at the show, what made you go with this story, without sharing any specifics necessarily, but how did you choose the story you were gonna tell?
Yeah, it's So the story, I've told it a lot with friends. And it's a very vulnerable story because the things that happen in it is it's a very human experience, but it's not something you expect to happen to yourself. And this particular story is it's just like this weird juxtaposition of a human experience, something that could happen to you that's like odd and crazy, but also happening in an environment where that's the least of your worries and things that you would expect.
Mm,
And it just those two things slapped together is just like, wow, this happened there or in that scenario and situation. And it just, yeah, it really affects people. And so I figure why not share a very ridiculous but um, real experience that occurred to me.
mhm. That's a great teaser. That's wonderful. And you shared with me that you want to tell a story at the Moth someday,
Most definitely. Yeah.
like a bucket list, right? And so how do you imagine that to be? Like, do you want to tell it at a Moth slam? Or rather, like you want to pitch your story and ideally work on it with a producer?
I have no idea. I feel like the slams are so fun because they're just so off the cuff, and sometimes there's no theme, and you just kind of get up there and you don't like the people get up there and you have no idea what they're going to tell a story about, and it's a lot of fun. But then I think it would also be kind of neat to have the more curated version where because I also think storytelling is an art, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, not everybody's a natural storyteller, and that's also a very vulnerable scenario to tell a story in. So it'd be kind of nice to like have that guiding hand to be like, all right, let's refactor this, let's work out the kinks and get a flow to it. But also that could add more stress because now you've got like this, you know, rehearsed tempo to live up to. So I don't know. I feel like I'm a fan of both, and
Yeah,
I would just be happy to be
yeah,
selected at all.
yeah. Cool, cool. And so, did you, for your first time telling a story, have you invited your friends, or would you rather like they weren't there to like? How do you feel?
So I have shared like the ads and things like that on my Instagram, and I think only one person noticed that I was on one of the flyers. And he's very excited to come. But that's also like one of those friends that I've known for 15 years. So it's like, okay, you already know all my stories. So here
Hmm.
comes support. Um, but
That's
I
nice.
think for the most part, I have a tendency to try new things and do things in stealth mode and
Right.
like, slide in, do it with a bunch of strangers who I will never see again.
I get that.
Yeah, and then maybe share with friends if I go at it again.
Yeah. Oh, that makes total sense. Yeah, that's awesome. So the show is on Friday, June the 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, how do you feel about telling a story? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm very excited. But also I'm not thinking about it. I'm just like, oh, like this thing is coming up. It's on the calendar, but I'm not
Just going with
thinking
it.
about it too deeply because I don't want to get nervous.
That's good. That's a good strategy. That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited. I can't wait for people to hear your story. It is vulnerable, like you said. It is entertaining. It is surprising. And thank you so much for doing this and for talking to me today. And I will see you at the show.
Yes, you remember.
See you. Bye bye.